EOS is just all about get strong in vision, traction, and healthy. Get on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get there to help you execute on it. Building a healthy team that really loves working together.
The bumper's up and it put us back in line. And so I could spend more time focusing on the people and bringing them into our culture.
Clarity and the vision, all of those things are supported by having a good structure underneath.
Hey there, and welcome to Your Next Gen Friend, a Successors Guide to Business Transition, a podcast for figuring out what's next in or beyond your family business. I'm Andrea Carpenter, transition strategist and second gen. Around here, we talk about the real stuff, family dynamics, identity, leadership, wealth, and how to define success on your own terms. Here's to finding your own way forward. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Your Next Gen Friend. Today I'm here with Adam and Jacqueline. I'm super excited to have both of them now EOS implementers, but both with a deep, rich history in their own family businesses as a second or fourth generation. So maybe each of you could just give a quick sentence about a little bit of background about who you are. We'll start with Adam and then go to Jacqueline.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Andrea. I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm Adam Hill, EOS implementer, certified exit planning advisor. I came from a fourth generation family business that was started by my great grandfather. I came into work in it in 2002 and ultimately worked my way into a variety of roles. Ended up in the CEO role in 2018, and from there, just inherited a lot of chaos, a lot of craziness within the organization. And, one thing I noticed at that time was that a lot of the family relationships seemed to become transactional, which tends to happen. And a lot of different owners, a lot of different visions for what the company should look like. And I won't go too deep into the woods there, but we were on the verge of insolvency and bankruptcy by my second year in that role. Discovered EOS shortly thereafter, and while it wasn't an overnight success, over the course of a couple of years, we grew our revenues back to a high level, became a 9-figure business, became sustainably profitable again. All the promises started to come true, and so things went great. But ultimately, I felt like I could deliver more impact to a larger number of companies if I could go out into the world and implement this great thing, EOS, specifically, for businesses in transition or family businesses that might have been struggling with the same kind of things we struggled with. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. And I'm so glad you're here. All right, Jacqueline, what about you?
Yeah, thank you again, Andrea, for having us. I am Jacqueline Jensen, EOS implementer as well. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, so from the age of 11, started speaking the business language and was talking about taxes before I was driving a car. Swore I would never work in the family business, and after college, returned to the family business. And ultimately found myself in leadership and management positions that I simply was not prepared for and didn't have the skills for. However, I had the grit and was bound and determined to figure it out. And so I turned a lot to leadership and management books and trying to find my way, but ultimately 70, 80-hour weeks just spinning my wheels, feeling a little lost. Ultimately, I came across the book Traction, which is a book on EOS, in 2019 and implemented that in our family business and ultimately lived some of the benefits of that, which were, complete shift of culture, fully investing in our team, reducing our turnover rates and more than doubling profits my last few years there. Ultimately, there was some misalignment with core values, and so I did exit the family business. And because I lived the transformation and the journey of EOS and soul-heartedly believe in it, became an EOS implementer a little over a year ago and just really enjoy working with family businesses to help them kind of reap the same benefits and transitions that I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think in case some people who are listening maybe haven't heard of EOS before, is one of you willing to give like a high level overview of what EOS is and how, particularly in a family business, you might see EOS start to get implemented. So maybe I know there's a whole spiel. So maybe Adam, you can give half, and Jacqueline, you can give the other half.
Sure. Yeah. Sounds good. I'll go and I'll wait for the gong, I guess, and then. But no, so yeah, basically EOS is just all about. It stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and really what it's designed to do is help entrepreneurial leadership teams to get strong in three things. They're called vision, traction, and healthy. So vision, you really want to get on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get there. Make sure that everybody in your organization is rowing in the same direction to get there. Traction from the standpoint of executing on that, because a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle with the execution part. It's really maybe easy to have a great big dream and have that vision, but executing on it is more difficult. So implementing the tools to help you execute on it. And then finally, just building a healthy team, cohesive team that really loves working together. Getting those three things strong really can create a great company. And we do so with 6 key components. And maybe that's where I'll pass it off to Jacqueline to maybe continue.
Yeah. So the premise of the 6 key components comes from this idea that entrepreneurs, specifically, especially family business owners, really deal with 136 things running around in their head at any given time. And those items can be boiled down, those issues can be boiled down to 6 key components. So we call those vision. Again, Adam touched on this. So vision is just getting everyone in your organization 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you plan to get there. And then people, how do you get the right people into the right seats? We've all heard that term, but EOS as implementers, we really dive into tangibly what does that mean for your unique organization. And then the data component is running your organization on facts, figures, objective information rather than feelings and emotions and egos that so often drive entrepreneurial businesses, especially family businesses. And so when those first 3 key components become crystal clear, so vision, people, and data become clear, then issues just pop out at us. And so issues can be problems, challenges, impurities, imperfections, and opportunities within a business. So just capturing those, because ultimately they can all be turned around to optimize the business. The 5th key component is processes. And so that is just getting all the most important things done the right and best way in your organization every time. And then the 6th key component is traction. So vision without traction is just a hallucination. Strengthening that traction component is just getting everything done the right way. And to Adam's point, we have to execute.
Mm-hmm. That's super cool. And I know there's some businesses who, like Jacqueline, you read the book and it's maybe you started implementing and putting some of it in process. I'm happy to share about our experience for everyone. We sort of did the same thing. Adam, I know you worked with an implementer. How early was that in your process of implementing EOS in your business?
Yeah, it was pretty much right away. I mean, when I discovered EOS, I was introduced to it through a mastermind group called GoBundance. I know you know that well, Andrea. And I just kept hearing about this EOS thing and how companies were benefiting from it. And so I decided to read the book in a weekend. And that next week, I called Richard Price, who was our implementer, to come in and really hired him on a wing and a prayer. We couldn't afford it. I mean, we were a $70 million company that was doing $70 million in revenue. None of that was getting to the bottom line. We were losing money, and our cash flow was, like I say, we were on the verge of insolvency. And but I knew that we needed to do something, and I knew that I didn't have the tools to really make that happen in our business. So that's kind of what led us to really just start really quickly. And yeah, it took a little time to get everybody aligned around wanting to do this crazy EOS thing that I was trying to bring into the business, but they saw the value in it really when they saw the honesty and openness start to come out. That was one of the first things Richard said to us is, I'm going to expect that you're going to be open and honest with each other, and I'm going to deliver the same to you. And that just gave everybody this sense of freedom, especially in a family business where, sacred cows run rampant, and a lot of times things are pushed under the rug. It gave everybody, family and non-family alike, the freedom to have that level playing field of openness and honesty. And that really started us down the path of building a healthy team.
Yeah, cool. And I want to dig in a little bit into what it actually looks like to do it. Maybe Jacqueline, can you talk about what that process looked like from reading the book Traction into starting to introduce it? Did you start with yourself personally? Were you bringing in a leadership team? What did that process look like for you?
Yeah. I love that story, Adam. That's really powerful parts that we can dig into. For me, I read the book Traction, and when I read it, it was this aha moment for me. So all these pieces, kind of management or leadership strategies that I tried to implement in the club and kind of cherry picked to implement in our family business, kind of came together in one unified system. So I knew that goals were important, right? We tried to implement 12-week year and different goal strategies into the business. It just hadn't stuck. So when I read Traction, it's like, this is it. Everything pulled together. Let's do it. I was, as I mentioned, already working 70, 80 hours a week, just kind of spinning my wheels. But I saw this as a way out of that to manage and lead my team better so that I would get a little more time back and a little more balance in my life. And so I took on another part-time job of learning the ins and outs of EOS. So EOS Worldwide does allow kind of a self-paced program that you can subscribe to and learn, but it was learning the material inside and out so I could stand in front of my team with confidence and lead them down this journey as well. I love that Adam pointed out using an implementer, the first thing they focused on was open, honest, healthy. And I will always share that in self-implementing, while I take pride in feeling like I did it pretty well, not really knowing what I was doing, knowing what I know now, I can look back and say it came off pretty well. It took us at least twice as long to get to healthy. Because myself, just like many business owners and leaders listening, you're wearing so many hats. So when I stood in front of my team, specifically on session days, I was wearing boss's daughter. I was wearing general manager. I was wearing boss. I was wearing facilitator, and I was wearing integrator hats. And so it was really hard for my team to see me as just facilitator and desiring a truly open and honest conversation in the room. So it simply took us longer to get to open and honest and healthy. However, the journey was certainly worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's cool. So at the Transition Strategist, we had a client and we call it the next adventure when the current owner is going on to something else. Her next adventure was becoming an EOS implementer. And so she worked through some of the initial kind of helping. It was just Dawn and Elizabeth at the time, two members of our leadership team were the leadership team, and she kind of helped them start to install it. And I think after that point, they stopped working with her and kind of went on this path of, okay, we're going to self-implement. And it got in their heads, like, our business is too small. We're not big enough. Oh, we don't need to use the tool that way. So by the time I came in to step into the business, I had no framework of what EOS really was, just that, like, hey, we use EOS. And honestly, for a while, I was like, is EOS the software 90? We use 90, the software. I was like, is this like what EOS is? Because it doesn't really make sense. And so it took me a long time, kind of the back way, what you're saying on how it can take time to really implement that in the right way. I think it took me, as someone new, stepping into the integrator role, and I love what you said, Jacqueline, about wearing lots of different hats, because there are many components. I guess that's like my takeaway, like now having been using EOS for a while. I mean, a business ecosystem or a family business it's like inherently complex. And so an operating system that's going to help you be a better leader and to help your team communicate better and to help you hit your goals and all these other things that you're doing, it also has to be complex to account for all of the different bits and pieces that go along with it. So I appreciate what you're saying. I know some people choose to self-implement. We have some clients. The reason I thought this might be an interesting episode is some of our clients are self-implementing EOS as a structure or way to go. I'm curious because I think both of you were kind of stepping into leadership roles. Let's just like dig in a little bit more to like the attraction of EOS. Like for me, it was something I could finally lean on and be like, oh, like there is structure here. So I know maybe you don't agree with me, but the structure says we have to get together for a day every quarter. And once a year, we're going to do our annual, and that's 2 days. And yes, we have to talk about our accountability chart, and we have to talk about this, and we have to talk about this. And so for me, for a while, when I was getting my footing under myself, it was like, well, it says we have to do it. So we kind of should. And that helped me be a more confident leader. I don't know for either of you if there's some type of story of what EOS made possible. Maybe Adam, we'll start with you and then go Jacqueline.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I could relate a lot to what Jacqueline was saying, especially like kind of leading in with wearing all the hats. I was definitely wearing the visionary integrator hat without even knowing what that was before EOS, and wearing marketing and sales operations for 150 employee company, which was a lot of weight, and add to that 60 family member owners within our business that were all again wanting kind of their own thing. There was kind of like a what's in it for me kind of thing that was happening in our business. And so I felt the weight of a lot of that, in addition to the weight of just keeping the business running on a day to day. And what I found with EOS that I really liked from that structural standpoint was, and I always have to be careful when I say this, because what I used to say was it took the weight of decision making off my shoulders, and that's not necessarily true, because obviously you have to make decisions, but it reduced the weight of those decisions to the extent that we were operating within a framework. And we were operating within a system, so that it was that when you start to get everyone aligned, the decisions that you're making, when they're aligned with values, with vision, with your focus, with your 10-year target in mind, with the greater good in mind, you are inherently making the aligned decisions, so that everybody, at least, even if they don't like the decision necessarily, they understand why it's being made. And if they don't, then they're not the right person. And those decisions become a lot more, I guess, there's a through line to the greater good. And that helps to kind of relieve the weight of decision making, especially in a family business, again, where there's so much expectations and weight and all of that kind of stuff on those. So that's really what it did for me to help me become a better leader, and just being able to operate in that framework. So, I'll say, and this is I'm biased, of course, but back in 2011, I invested in an MBA, and I got an MBA, and I did that. And then in 2021, we started implementing EOS. And I'll say, from the standpoint of the education and the return on the investment, EOS by far and away was the best business investment in education and leadership that I could have made, because it just made me a better leader. It was learning within the trenches and building that experience. And not only for me, though, it was also for the entire leadership team who was involved in that. We truly became a team. And that was one of the powerful things about it. I mean, and I was able to learn from them. They were able to learn, from the system, and we just became a team, a strong team. And that's what I attribute to EOS to.
That's great. And I think we should definitely come back to the team piece in a little bit. Jacqueline, I don't know if you have an answer to that question.
Yeah, not much different than what you and Adam stated, so I certainly won't pile on. I think, Adam, you said it incredibly well, and I'll just try and paint the picture of what it felt like for me. And so a reference I always like to go back to is for anyone who's been bowling before. If you go bowling, as we typically do as adults, you're trying to throw a strike every time. However, oftentimes we land in the gutter. And so when implementing EOS and the framework, and someone who has gone before us, Gina Wickman, who's gone before us and worked with thousands of entrepreneurial teams and kind of pulled every lever on why we implement in the order we do and how we take teams through the EOS journey as we do, it felt as if, again, I've been bowling without gutters, and now all of a sudden, now I'm bowling like a 5-year-old again and put the bumpers up. And so every time, I stray, I'm like, oh, we could go chase this shiny thing. Or my stepfather said, hey, let's try this. Or, someone went outside of our core values and operated in a way that didn't align with where we were going or how we behaved within our organization. The bumper caught that for us and it put us back in line. And so it gave me a lot more confidence in not only the journey I was taking the leadership team on, because there is a framework for it, but also how to correct when things went out of line. And so because there was that framework, I could spend more time focusing on the human elements and people first, and bringing them into our culture. And sometimes they fit and sometimes they aren't the right fit. But it gives such clarity into the direction you're looking to take the company and the organization. And it really pulls not the human element out, but the ego and the emotions out, specifically in a family business.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, both of you. I think the tools of EOS and how it allows you to get out of your head a little bit, and into like the people who are helping build the system is good. I know it can take a long time to get from like a leadership system into like EOS as a culture, in the whole business. I'm just curious, do you feel that EOS contributed to your sort of, I think, well, I've heard you both say it contributed to your leadership growth. Can you just paint a little bit of more of a picture around, like, as you think about who you were when you started EOS and the type of leader that you were after kind of going through the process of implementing EOS? Is there anything in particular that stands out about how that impacted you personally?
Yeah, Jacqueline, you want to take that one first?
Sure. I think, initially I became the general manager of a private country club. That was our family's business, at the age of 28. So I was overseeing 120 employees, without the skills. And a lot of these are blue collar, our frontline knowledge workers, high turnover rate, lots of uncertainty for, as a leader, as a manager of the team, a lot of uncertainty in the sense of, are they going to show up today? What is the mindset that they're coming to work with? Do they understand the job? And so that can quickly lead to frustrations and resentment. And so early on, in my late 20s as a leader, I was so focused on the outcome. And if the outcome wasn't achieved, then I would become frustrated with the individual. And in implementing EOS, completely pivoted to taking this ownership of everything that happened within the business. And so if someone stepped outside of a standard or an expectation, I turned it back to myself. And so what have I not communicated clearly to them, right? How did I not set them up for success? Where did I stray? And as we shifted the culture of the club, which took the entire leadership team to do, then employees began to have a clear understanding of how their responsibilities and their role contributed to the overall business success. They felt empowered. They felt invested in. We could spend more time teaching not just the skills they needed in the job, but we spent a lot of time talking about financial planning and just financial knowledge, because a lot of our employees were in college or in debt. And so how can we help you with these pressures outside of work and invest in you to help make your overall life better, because you're making such a contribution to the business? And that just led to this practicality of like, hey, we're going to invest in you and we expect you to show up on time. And all of a sudden, our employees were excited to show up. They were excited to complete their roles and responsibilities. They took ownership of their own roles. They asked for help. They called out issues. They helped us continue to optimize the business. And it was just this really cool full circle moment, which allowed me to kind of lean into more of my innate leadership style, which is caring for people first, kind of that servant leadership style, rather than I'm just not being so stressed about not achieving the outcome. So I think that's simply stated, I went from this very like outcome based leader and prioritizing that over people. And when I became a people focused leader, the rest sorted itself out. I just needed that framework and kind of the guidance and the bumpers that I alluded to help make that transition.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Adam, what about you?
Yeah, so as I kind of reflect on that, I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities in our stories between Jacqueline and I, because we had about 150 employees, so similar number, a lot of them blue collar as well, and so I related a lot to everything that Jacqueline was saying about having to try to kind of build that culture around it. And within our company, because we were a fourth generation company that had a lot of history, 100-year-old company, one thing I noticed that was kind of a dynamic that built into that with regard to the team and how the culture operated. Because when I think of team, I think of culture, basically kind of those, those are kind of similar frames. But that we got into this mindset of there just became a lot of mythology around the company, a lot of like, my memory of our founder, of my great-grandfather, was only that of what I can remember when I was maybe 5 years old. He died when I was 5. So anything before that was just a silhouette of a man that was like standing in a hallway sometime. Everything else was stories that were told down. And that was true of everyone in the organization. So we all kind of made up this mythology around that. And I think that happens a lot in especially legacy family business. And our intention turned to, we need to preserve this. We need to make sure we're preserving it. And that's not a bad intention, but when it starts to grow in that sense of like, we're preserving this culture and preserving everything at the expense of creating new value, that's when things start to get really challenged and we start to operate more based on fear rather than leading with love, which I think, Jacqueline, to your point, is where that servant leadership comes in. And so I noticed that a lot about my leadership was I was leading from this place of fear early on because I was afraid that we might lose it. And the team dynamic was afraid that they might lose their livelihoods in this thing that was always so secure for so long. And so there was just all of that idea of we need to protect this. And so I guess all of that to say that it took us a lot of time, and within EOS, that framework of building in the tools over time started to shift the mindset away from that protect and preserve to more, how are we creating new value? What ideas do we have to move us forward? How can we break the sacred cows and start to build something? And I have an interesting story about that, about like kind of those sacred cows or golden calves or whatever you want to call them, but that when I came into the company, we learned about our core values, or I learned about our core values, which at the time were integrity, quality, safety, and service. And I heard them all the time. They were written on everything. They were written on our mugs. They were on all our paperwork. They were everywhere to be seen. Integrity, quality, safety, and service. And it wasn't until we got into the rooms of EOS. And by the way, I was just kind of told that those were our values. I wasn't asked if, hey, do you align with these values? It was just kind of being told this is what you need to adhere to. When I got into the rooms and started running EOS, that was, within the first 3 sessions, we started talking about core values and what are your core values? And I said, well, that's easy. It's integrity, quality, safety, and service. They always have been. They were divinely inspired, and a lightning bolt hit a rock, and these were our core values. And we started to see grimaces within the leadership team. And Richard, to his credit, he called it out, and he was just like, well, I think we need to go deeper on this. And I wrestled with it. But we came up with it, and I actually called my dad and I asked him, hey, how did we come up with these core values? Like, when were these, did great grandfather, come up with these? And he said, no, that was like in 1984, I think. The then president, who was your great uncle, decided he needed something to put on his marketing materials. So he just came up with those in an afternoon and they became our values. Like, got it. So it just kind of imprinted there, that whole idea that we need to start investigating and digging in and going into the dark forest of the things and challenge the assumptions that we've already had, so that we can actually find the truth and really get to the root of who we really are as an organization. And once we started getting to the root of who we really were, we started to lose some people by attrition that weren't aligned with that. Then we started to select out people who weren't aligned with it. And then we started to bring in people who were, and that changed everything for us. That's where we started to really align with that. So sorry for the long kind of story on that, but I thought that's just kind of how it gradually built over time to unpack a lot of those sacred cows and bring us into alignment with where we needed to be.
No, it's super, super helpful to have a visual. And I think something you're shifting for me is a lot of EOS in my head is still like, we have the data component and we do our rocks and we have our IDS and we go through and we talk through all of those things, but you're both framing it in this bigger like people piece for me, which I really appreciate. I know that EOS, I mean, I just listed some of them, has many different tools to help a business start to implement and make sure that all the components are healthy. Do each of you have a favorite tool? I'm curious what that is and why. Maybe we'll start with Jacqueline, then go to Adam.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many wonderful tools, but I think for family businesses and successors, the Vision Traction Organizer is the one that was the most impactful tool for me. So in family business, it's so easy for leaders, especially those across generations, to assume that you're on the same page, when in reality, you're really operating from completely different perspectives. So for me, having a clear and aligned core values is just a non-negotiable. You mentioned it just a minute ago, Andrea, like people, the journey you take with people and culture is so important, and such a big part of EOS. And it's rooted in really discovering your true core values for your unique organization. So you don't end up with some, as Adam mentioned, that are integrity. Right? Like, of course, each operation, every business wants to operate with integrity, or should want to, but is that truly a core value for you? So I think having those clear and aligned core values, again, is just a non-negotiable for me. So when those values are discussed and then agreed upon and then lived, they give everyone, family and non-family members alike, just a standard to measure how you're going to show up each day and how you make decisions and how you're going to choose to behave amongst your team, and how you choose to lead. And so it's that framework again, for that. So right along core values is going to be your core focus. So that's when you have clarity on why the business exists. Like, are we a purpose, cause, or passion? And then what are we best at? What's our niche? And so again, there's over different generations and with family members and non-family members, everyone can come in and say they're aligned. But when you really get curious, as Adam said, like really get curious and dig in, there's often large differences in perspective and what it means to each individual. So getting clear on that is so important, to make sure that you're just not pulled in different directions and you stay aligned. So the Vision Traction Organizer just forces those conversations. Those are just 2 questions out of the 8 questions that we define on the Vision Traction Organizer as EOS implementers. But that tool and those 2 questions, I think, are so important. And that was really something that was really transformational, not just for me, but for the entire leadership team when we were able to truly discover what those meant for us.
Yeah, and before Adam shares his, I'm curious, like if you were in the family business today and you had just learned about EOS and you were going to start like a conversation about the vision traction organizer and some of the questions on it, like what would that discussion or process look like for your team? Like how would you actually bring that to your team?
Yeah, so it's part of the EOS journey. It's built into our proven process. So in working with an implementer, it is what we build out on your second and third day working with an implementer. We answer the 8 questions found on the Vision Traction Organizer to create that clarity, again, leading into the vision component and the traction component. So let's clearly state who we are, our core values, our core focus, that 10-year target Adam alluded to earlier, and really break that down into what that means for this next 90 days. So what are we going to focus on? What rocks are we going to focus on for the next 90 days in order to see those things come to fruition? And kind of everything in between. So I skipped over some of the questions, but we break the Vision Traction Organizer down over days 2 and 3. So you have plenty of time to dig into it, have real, open, honest conversations with family members and leadership team members that may be non-family members, and really gain agreement. Again, we just get super curious. Like, okay, I heard you, but what does that mean to you? Tell me more.
Yeah, great questions. Adam, what about you? Do you have a favorite tool?
Yeah, I would totally steal the VTO as well, but I'll throw a different out there because I do love the Vision Traction Organizer, of course, because it does help you to crystallize your vision and bring it down to the ground level. It just really aligns the execution and the vision building elements of EOS. But what I guess the one that became one of my favorites over time that I always hated at first was just the issue solving track. I mean, in our first sessions of operating on EOS, I was so frustrated with issue solving because we'd always go in there and we'd fall victim to what all EOS implementers caution us that we're going to do, which is we discuss the heck out of the issue and we don't ever solve anything. We did that consistently. But what I learned over time as we began practicing in that issues solving track and going through the identify, discuss, and solve phase of that was that it was kind of a perfect combination of art and science in that. There was a science behind this methodology that we want to dig down to the root of what the real issue is and not just treat the symptoms that sit on our issues list, but dig down really deep and find out what they are. Go into that dark forest and go into the danger so that we can really get there. And then discuss it briefly so that we're all aligned and we all understand what the actual issue is and some of the ideas on what to solve it, and then really come up with a plan of attack to solve and make that issue go away. That became really critical because what I realized there was that every organization on the planet has issues. The best performing organizations on the planet have issues. The worst performing organizations on the planet have issues. It's a level playing field as far as issues are concerned. And if you can get great at that, if you and your team can get really great at prioritizing and solving those issues, well, then you're going to solve an elevated set of issues next week and then the next week so that you keep improving and you keep growing. And in that process, you're not just solving issues and making yourself better and helping to grow the business. You and your leadership team are also becoming healthier in that you're learning to manage conflict better. You're learning to go into that, to discuss the real meaty issues that are affecting your business. And that just builds a healthier team. So I think that over the long term, as you every week get into your issues list and you start solving those issues, it's just a really, really impactful tool that can really help you get better, as long as you can get through that awkward teenage phase, which every company goes through. And I'm sure you went through that too, Jacqueline, when you implemented it. I'm sure you're going through that too, Andrea, as you implemented it. It's tough to get through, but once you do, you become better.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that and definitely agree with that awkward teenage phase. I like that. There was one more I wanted to bring up because I was actually talking to another next gen who mentioned this, and it was actually the inspiration for this episode. She is just an employee in the business. She has no leadership. position at all in the business yet. And she said that she loved the scorecard that they're using inside the business. So they're obviously running on EOS. And she said that the scorecard really helped her. The scorecard in combination with the rocks really helped her understand more of the nitty gritty of how things were working and how what she was doing, what her scorecard item said that she was supposed to do, how that contributed to the bigger picture or the bigger vision of the company. She felt like she could have a lot of ownership over one piece as that sort of went bigger. And after talking with her and going back and looking at our scorecard, I realized I do really feel a similar way in terms of how like breaking things down a little bit smaller to align a specific, like what's an action I know I can take or something that I know I can do that is going to move this towards something else. It helps me feel, even though sometimes as a successor or like I'm not the person in charge, right? I don't have 100% or like any ownership. At the time when we started, I didn't have any ownership in the business. Now I have 10%, but like having such a small minority like ownership of the business, the scorecard still helps me feel like, you know what, that's something that I can totally control that is leading up to the bigger vision and the direction of where the company is going. So I think that's a fun tool too. So
Absolutely.
awesome. As we get close to wrapping up, any other thoughts on EOS, particularly for people who are rising the ranks or growing as a leader inside of their family business, and how this might be an interesting tool for them to use?
Yeah, I think EOS, it's more than mechanics, or like you started, Andrea. It can seem like such this rigid structure and you have to follow everything. But ultimately, that structure is what allows us to feel liberated to really spend time and energy where we're best suited for, right? Like all the repeat mundane tasks can be kind of systemized, like I mentioned. And that way you can more humanize the business. I forget the name of the individual, like Dora Sharp, I think it was a Four Seasons, has a quote similar to that. Like implement the structure into the business so you can really humanize the business at the end of the day. And so I think that that's something that EOS really did for me, and it also fundamentally shifted how I related, not only to myself, but my family, and then my role as a successor. So before EOS, I'd often struggle with kind of the tension between being both a family member and a leader. And I think, something common for successors is like this challenge of balancing my identity, which is within the family, a daughter, and then the responsibility within the business, which is the leader, or the decision maker or the boss. And so being able to have a structure that allows me to kind of compartmentalize those different parts of my identity was super helpful. And that's one of the cool things at EOS is there's a place for everything within the EOS framework. So EOS gave me that framework that separated relationships from my roles, and instead of every conversation being loaded with emotion, I now had a shared language and structure that could guide some of the decisions within the business, that made it possible to focus on what was best for the business while still respecting other family dynamics. So I think it was to me, that structure was actually liberating, and that's something I've heard from several business owners, and it's always really resonated with me.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. And Adam, I guess I'll recognize, Jacqueline, what you shared, and that the separation of like which hat are you wearing. I think that's something I've seen a lot in the EOS world. Like, am I wearing a daughter hat, or am I wearing my like company integrator hat. I think that is really, it can be really helpful in a context where you're switching between a couple different roles between the same groups of people. So I appreciate you tying that back to how EOS helped you think about that. Adam, I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to add to the conversation.
Yeah, no, I think that was super, spot on what Jacqueline said about that, especially in a family business with regard to, how to really clarify and understand the roles. And, there's when we're looking at the right people for the right seats in EOS, we have, we talk about the idea of, do they get that seat? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? And something often overlooked in family businesses. It certainly was in our family business. And in a lot of ways you have that's replaced with things like certain expectations of the next generation, or certain maybe ambiguity of the next generation of where they sit, or maybe creating roles so that family can have seats to sit in. And all of those are dangerous things to do because you might be putting expectations on somebody in the next generation, or if you are the next generation, you might feel like there's expectations on you that you may not be able to fulfill, or that you don't want to fulfill, or you might not feel like you're ready to, or maybe you want something different. Or maybe if you were like me and originally came into the company where it felt like a role was created for you just to get you in the door, it feels almost like it's just like, do you really need to be here? Did you earn your spot here, or do you have to overly prove yourself? But with the right structure in place first, and this is, I think it's because it was hard for us, but I feel like this would be hard for a lot of families to do. But taking people out of the equation first and focusing on structure first, which is what we do in EOS, and building out the right seats, and then trusting the process to know like that you can get the right people in the seats. And if there's family members that want to do that, then that's great. But just there's another EOS implementer that we both know really well, Sarah Stern, who is kind of the family business guru, and she talks a lot about the idea of a three circles model of family business, which was created back in 1978, I think it was, by two Harvard professors that I can't pronounce their names. But they talk about this idea that we should have an owner circle, a family circle, and then the business circle. And the business should operate as a business. And in the overlaps, there are going to be people that overlap in those that serve in ownership and family and the business. But ultimately, when you're in the business, you are always an employee. You're an employee first in the business. You're not an owner. When you're even if you sit in that ownership seat and the family seat, you are still an employee sitting in a seat on the accountability chart. And there needs to be a respect for that. That's not easy for family businesses, but it is extremely effective, because you're now operating as an effective business that is going to support those other two elements of family and ownership. And that's really, I think, where we need to what we need to look at is families running businesses together.
Yeah, families running business to take care of. Adam and I were both at the University of Denver Bailey Family Program, and there was a panel, and one of the guys said that his grandma, who started their family enterprise, didn't want the family business, to interfere with the business, which was the family.
Yeah.
And so, like, what is that distinction? And I love you bringing in the three circle model. I've heard of that before too. And I think there was one last parallel I wanted to draw, and just obviously a lot of the work that I do is around transition and business, and the structure of something like EOS helps the business be more ready for that transition. I know Adam's thinking a lot too about like when you like reach these moments of inflection, whether it's in a family business or just like transition in general, the structure and the clarity and the vision and who's doing what role and what seats do we really need to have, all of that, whether it's a people transition, someone moving into a different leadership role, or an equity transition, someone's getting gifted something, or someone is owning a different type of shares, or someone's making a purchase, all of those things are supported by having a good structure underneath. It makes the business more valuable. It helps the team stay together more. It can help you communicate better. So I think it's a really cool and interesting framework. And that's why I wanted to bring it into this space of business transition and all of that as well. As we get close to the end, I know that there's several. There's so many different implementers in the world that can help you think about EOS and how to bring it into your family business. Each one kind of has a different, unique spin. Sometimes it's they're local, so they can travel to you. Sometimes they have a specific industry or thing that they're thinking about. Adam and Jacqueline, why don't each of you just share kind of what your unique kind of area or type of business that you love to help is to implement EOS, and how people could reach out to you if they were interested in exploring more. So let's start with Adam and then go to Jacqueline.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrea. Appreciate that. And so I like to help business owners in transition, that feel like they're transitioning towards something, even if they don't know necessarily where it is, but they just feel like there's chaos. And for me, a lot of times that's a legacy company, could be a family business. A lot of times those are overlapped, but companies that maybe are over 20 years old and they just don't, and they're kind of struggling with what's next. It could be a generational transition. It could be a leadership transition. It just could be the business is in some sort of transition. And that's kind of one of the uniques that I practice. The other is that I can help companies to really set up the value in the business using the structure of EOS so that they could position themselves for an exit or a transition to the next generation, whatever that may look like. So that's really who I want to help, and I do so with the experience that I've had as both visionary and integrator of my own family's business and implementing EOS from the inside.
Awesome. And Jacqueline, what about you?
Yeah, similarly, I really enjoy working with family businesses. And to Adam's point, and Andrea, you mentioned it too, like making sure that we are focused on the family first, and the business success separate, so that both can succeed. So family businesses, and then those in hospitality. I come from the hospitality world, so hospitality and trade services, kind of with those knowledge-based workers or blue-collar workers. I really enjoy working with those because I just wholeheartedly believe that by investing in those frontline workers, true companies, we're investing not only in people, but also in the business itself. And so I am based in the Southeast, but I do travel.
Love a good travel. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, perfect. And I'm assuming they would just reach out to both of you via email. So I'll put both of your emails in the show notes.
Perfect.
So awesome. Okay, well, 3 fun questions to close us out from each of you. And then we'll get on our way. So this is just to help us learn a little bit more about you as a person and some of your journey. So let's start with Adam on the first question. What have you chosen not to inherit?
Well, clearly the family business after leaving, but no, I've chosen not to inherit the idea that there's only one path that needs to be taken from the family business.
Thank you. And Jacqueline?
Similar joke, the family business. However, truly the belief that success doesn't mean doing it all by yourself. I've chosen to embrace collaboration and empowerment instead.
I love that. And let's start with Jacqueline on the next one. What's a part of your story that you're learning to honor right now?
I am learning to honor the resilience that it took to walk away, from something that once defined me, and kind of the courage to start over in alignment with my values and who I am today.
Yeah, I love that. And we're cheering you on. When I heard your story, it's just really inspiring and empowering to see that was obviously how much you loved and poured into your team, even. And I'm sure the gut-wrenching decision or choice that was made and kind of the process to move out and design what's next for you. So, Adam, what about you?
Yeah, I would love to steal that answer too, of resilience, Jacqueline. But I'll add to it that this just the honoring the transformations that I've made. I've often, I think, and this may be true for many people in family business, we hear a lot about the idea of entitlement, and some people take that to mean that there's this sense that the next generation is entitled, and there's an arrogance that comes with that a lot of, and maybe sometimes there is, but I think either at least just as often, if not more so, there's also a sense of not enoughness that you feel in working for a family business. That, do I deserve to be here? Am I really entitled, or is this, and so I'm honoring that part of me that really feels like I am enough to do this and make it on my own, and go through another transformation and come out the other side, really adding a lot of value and helping a lot of people. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I love that, Adam. I feel that tension a lot too. Adam alluded earlier, we're both in a group called Go Abundance. When I first joined, it felt like I was one of the only people who was kind of from a successful family. Like, a lot of my wealth came because my dad had a really successful exit. But now, like, I was an entrepreneur on my own, and I was trying to prove, right? Like, I can do this. And that was like a huge tension point. I always hate when people use that word, entitled, or all these other things, because that is not what I see the majority of the time from people in the world and people working in family business. It's a hard and big decision to decide to go into a family business in the first place. So I think all three of us on this call would honor you if that's you and something you've chosen to do.
Absolutely.
All right. And then lastly, in one word, what are you the first of in your family? Adam.
One word. I'm going to cheat and give 2 words, I guess. Well, I'll just say that it's a tough question. I'll just say embracing freedom.
And Jacqueline, what about you?
I also cheated a little with a hyphenated, abundance minded.
I love that. All right. Well, thank you both for coming on and sharing about EOS and what that made possible for you and your leadership journeys, and also for all the people you worked with and your teams and the growth, and obviously how it played such a big impact and part in both of your stories, that now this is what you're doing and pursuing as sort of a next phase for you, is helping other businesses implement this and bring the goods in. So if you're listening to the show and interested in what EOS is and what it could do for you, I promise I'm not sponsored by them, but Adam actually they have a cool 90-minute experience just to introduce you to some of the tools, and you can kind of answer and rank where you think you are on the scale. And I encourage you to just take a look at doing that with one of them. It can help you learn a lot about your business and where you're at and where there's room for improvement. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for today. I hope today's episode offered some clarity, or at least a little company. If this resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with another Next Gen. While my podcast is for the Successors, you can also check out its sister show, The Business Transition Roadmap, hosted by my business partner, Elizabeth Ledoux. There's lots of great material in business and family succession over there. I hope you'll take a listen. Be well, and see you next time.